Government says it's grappling with a balancing act between public sector wage increases and additional headcount. It says there's always competition between the two.
We think despite the rhetoric from government and from the private sector, the wage bill there's nothing wrong with it. It's stable. It's been stable at about 30% to 35% of the budget over the last many years. In fact, what we've noticed is that there's an increase in the amount of vacancies in the public service, especially around critical frontline service functions like nurses and doctors, teachers, police officers, home affairs. And the consequence, if you don't fill these critical vacancies, then you see long queues at home affairs. You see long queues at hospitals. You see nurses having to perform the jobs of 2 or 3 staff. That has an impact upon the quality of service that the public needs to receive from the government. We've also seen a very worrying trend over the last 2 decades where the headcount of the police service has significantly decreased from about 208,000 at the beginning of the century to about 172,000 today. And this is despite the population increasing significantly, despite crime levels rising significantly.
That indeed is where the political versus economic kind of trade-off lies. Does one go for an expedient social kind of approach where you do allow and permit very big wage increases? If so, in the longer term, we pay a very high price. That would actually mean government will have to borrow more money, which means that the financing burden gets passed on to a future generation. It could mean, for instance, that if government borrows money this year to finance a civil servant's salary increase to allow for inflation, then that debt might only be repaid by that civil servant's yet-to-be-born grandchild in 30 or 40 years' time. So a very dangerous path to follow.
Unions and government have been struggling to find each other on salary hikes. However, Public Service and Administration Minister Thulas Nxesi says he's contemplating implementing its contentious final offer of a 3% wage hike to reduce uncertainties about the fiscal outlook. This as time is running out ahead of the medium-term budget policy statement next week.
It's hypocritical of government to complain about the wage bill when politicians saw no problem giving themselves a 3% increase this year, when ministers saw no problem themselves asking for government to pay for the electricity and water bills, when ministers, mayors, MECs, etc., driving government-paid for cars. They don't pay for petrol, they don't pay for domestic workers, etc. We've seen ministers deciding to increase the amount of staff in their personal offices from 11 to 15. So we think government needs to be a bit more sensitive to the real plight that teachers and nurses and doctors, public servants are facing, and to treat them with respect.
I'm glad I'm not the Minister of Finance. It's an impossible battle to win because he has to balance economic reality with, of course, political expediency. I mean, after all, the minister is as a politician, he's a member of the ruling party, and they have to be cognizant of future elections, future leadership elections, and of course, in a couple of years' time, a national election for the ruling party or for the party in power.
A new report has recommended that there be an agreement on a broad package to moderate pay and increase headcount. It says this will improve the effectiveness of public services. The report, titled Public Services, Government Employment and the Budget, has found that cutting public sector employment translates to cuts in the provision of government services. Diabo Seto, SABC News, Johannesburg.